We'd sold a physical business in the UK and bought some houses for income, and then we moved to live in Lanzarote, one of the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. And I'd gone from earning six figures a year. We had a chunk of money with us and we got income from the houses. But I went singing and playing guitar in a band for a few years, which was a long-term dream. But after a couple of years, getting to 2002, started to realise that we were spending a lot more money than I had originally budgeted. So I tried building websites, spent a year doing that, didn't do that very well at all, picked a completely wrong niche, and then I stumbled across Forex trading, and I'd never heard of it. And I paid the guy $4,000 for a DVD to learn how to do it. And I kind of got to the point of quitting, as most of us do when you're self-employed. And I had an extra incentive in that if it hadn't worked, we would have had to leave and go back to the UK.
Imagine building a business that hits $1 million in sales, only to watch it slowly drift towards nothing as you hit that invisible ceiling. Our guest today found himself in that exact position, trapped in a low-ticket model where every attempt to raise prices resulted in a drop in customers. He was facing a plateau that felt more like a brick wall. However, by radically shifting how he valued his expertise and restructuring his entire offer stack, he didn't just save his business, he created a high-ticket program with a permanent waiting list. This transformation gave him the ultimate entrepreneurial freedom, the ability for his entire family to live on a sun-soaked island, having packed nothing but a few suitcases. Welcome to today's episode of Your Business Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Shapiro, author of Your Business Growth Playbook, and my guest today is Mark Walton. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you.
So, Mark, one of the things I love is you're a fellow serial entrepreneur. You haven't just done one thing in your career. You've gotten out there, you've done a bunch of things, and you've learned along the way. And like many serial entrepreneurs, you're a huge proponent of this concept of like multiple streams of income. But I want to take us back to, 2002. So you started making one of your early transitions around that time. And this was in the early days of your trading career. Take us back to that beginning. What were you up to then?
We'd sold a physical business in the UK and bought some houses for income. And then we moved to live in Lanzarote, one of the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. And I'd gone from earning six figures a year. We had a chunk of money with us and we got income from the houses. But I went singing and playing guitar in a band for a few years, which was a long-term dream. But after a couple of years, getting to 2002, started to realize that we were spending a lot more money than I had originally budgeted. Two reasons for that. One is I'd got three kids in private education, so that was costing. But also, if you live in a Spanish kind of environment, it's very much a cafe society, and you're out every day, and coffees and cakes and things add up quickly. So I tried building websites, spent a year doing that, didn't do that very well at all, picked a completely wrong niche, and then I stumbled across Forex trading, and I'd never heard of it. And I paid the guy $4,000 for a DVD to learn how to do it. Nowadays, we give more on our website for $50 than I paid. But it was hard, and it's got a lot worse since, because if you go on YouTube, etc., there's all these dudes with their hats on backwards, lent against a Ferrari, telling you you're going to get rich tomorrow. And guess what? It's not true. And so I had a couple of years struggling with that. And I was doing it 8 hours a day, which in retrospect was the worst thing I could have done. So now I'm living in a beautiful place, a beautiful part of the world. And I'm in the basement 8 hours a day, which was not the plan. And I kind of got to the point of quitting, as most of us do when you're self-employed. And I had an extra incentive in that if it hadn't worked, we would have had to leave and go back to the UK. And I do not ever want to go back to the UK, and certainly didn't then. And it had taken a few years for the kids to settle down to, move into another country. And at the time, they couldn't speak Spanish. So for them, it'd been a major upheaval. And if we'd have had to go back to the UK, tail between the legs for me, but obviously quite traumatic for them. So it was a good extra reason for me to push on. I then found a mentor, a retired trader from America. And the more I think about it afterwards, I was silly. I was trying to do it on my own. I was thinking, I'm a clever guy. I started my first business at 20. I know what I'm doing. And I should have reached out for help sooner. And within 6 months of my mentor, he managed to, it got me to turn things around. And a lot of times with anything to do with business and like with your book, it's not massive changes, it's tweaks, it's little things that can make a big difference. And so he taught me how to do things in a professional way. And within a year, he'd introduced me to a fund, and I was trading, well, within 18 months, I was trading over $1 million and getting a profit share, all from the basement on an island off the coast of Africa. So that was the first big, hurdle online to.
So you found yourself trading. And what I like is there's a few pieces there for our listeners I want to tease out, that you had this new venture, this new direction you were going, but you also had other sources of income that were able to support you going out of this new venture. And you also had like the dual-sided motivation. Us, the lizard brain in all of us is motivated both by the carrot and the stick. And you had that carrot of this pretty great, lifestyle you created with the family, and that stick of not wanting to go back to the UK. So you found the double-sided motivation there.
Yes. And I had the initial motivation as well. I mean, I'm a great believer. It's the Think and Grow Rich Napoleon Hill book. You've got to have a burning desire. And I was coming up to 40. I was a business that I created. I think the first week's sales was $200. And by the time we sold up, we were doing tens of thousands a week. And on the surface, it all looked really successful. But I just grew to hate it. And I think if I'd have stayed in the UK doing that, I'd probably be dead or on my third heart attack now. So it was a major, major step, to sell your house, sell your business, a suitcase each, and disappear off to an island in the sun. But it took planning, and everything I've ever done is controlled risk. The houses were giving us income. We had a lump of cash. And then since then, when I teach folks and mentor people, I'm saying, you don't just look at trading for income. You want to be able to monetize perhaps your current skills and also go off at tangents. And that's what I've tried to do.
For serial entrepreneurs, oftentimes the tangents are what leads to the next new business that eclipses the previous thing. So that's good to have those. So, all right. You mentioned earlier all these folks online teaching trading, they're on the Ferrari saying you'll get rich overnight and so forth. There's no shortage of folks trying to teach what they've learned out in the world. Now, in 2008, you partnered up with a marketer who was able to help craft the right messaging around this and help you to launch a course. Tell us about that course that was launched, what that partnership was like, and how you got to that early sales point of the $1 million in sales so early on.
Well, I'd started putting posts on Twitter, sharing some tips and advice, and people started coming back to me saying, this guy seems to know what he's talking about, and asking me to teach them. But I had no experience for online marketing. And so this gentleman, Dean Saunders, came to me and said, look, I was aware of him as a marketer, and he wasn't like most of them, really fully spammy and overhypey. And he said, look, I can see that you know what you're doing with this. And he had a bit of a background in this, but he had a list of people who were interested. And he said, why don't we do it where we'll create the course, we'll both create the course, I'll market it. And then I was doing weekly updates. So I carried on doing that for a number of years. And it was quite funny, really, because we did millions in sales and I'd never met him. We met online. I did finally in 2017 go to visit him in New Zealand, but that's the world that we live in now. And with that, a few tips with that actually as well. I'd written an ebook and I was just ready to put this tome onto Amazon, and he said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We'll give it away free. And I was kind of a mind, well, what the heck? But he was right, because that ebook helped us to do $1 million in sales because we were just giving it away. And again, people would read it and think, well, this guy's not hyping. He's telling it as it is. And that would then lead to people joining the low ticket of the mentor program. The other tip is, if you're thinking of doing anything like this, we spent 3 months, 10, 15 hours a day building all the content. Nowadays, the smarter way to do it is just create a month's worth of content and see if it sells. And then if it does, you know that you can carry on. Whereas we did 3 months. At the time when we did it, there wasn't much competition. And therefore, we really should have gone in probably a higher ticket to start with. But there wasn't much competition, and we were something new, and it sold very well.
So one of the things I want to highlight for our listeners there is that you went out and were publishing original content and building your platform, your audience, your list that was hungry, that showed that demand, that validated you had a market and the right message, and then you created the product for that. I think sometimes business owners have an idea for the thing they want to sell, but they don't have the market figured out or the messaging. And so they spend all their time creating the thing, where what they should be doing is figuring out who that market is and how to talk to that market. So really, really good tip there. Are you enjoying this episode? Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. That'll help you get more episodes automatically as soon as they come out. So hit that subscribe button right now. And if you have a minute, leave a quick rating and review. That helps support the show. So early on, Mark, you had this growth and you were seeing that connection. You realized that, the audience was resonating. People wanted more. What did that feel like to know you were in demand and people valued that knowledge you had?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the good thing for me was I was doing the work anyway because of working for the fund. So I needed to do the research and I was trading every day. So for me, it was a bolt on to what I was doing. But suddenly to see this surge in income from the same amount of work, and partly that's why I was able then to transition it from, instead of working for a fund, so really I'd gone back to work for somebody, I was able then to start working and managing. Technically, it's not classed as managing money, but we had clients would come to us, money in their own accounts, and the broker would collect it all and I would trade it for them. So that way, I suddenly was able to, well, again, this gave me some financial income, plus still the houses, which were now bringing in more money. And I was able to say, okay, I'm not going to work for anybody else. I rarely worked for anybody else in my life. And I said, I'm going to do this for my own clients. And so the people I'd started teaching started to come to me and say, well, look, this bloke knows what he's talking about. Will you trade for me? And whilst I am learning, whilst they are learning, the chance to earn money. So it was another spin-off from what I was already doing. And it gave me the cushion to be able to do it. So that was a great benefit as well.
Yeah, nicely done. So one of the things we talk about is experimentation and testing things. And you've done this so many times in your business. And I encourage all business owners to test and experiment to find where those limits are. And so in the book, one of the strategies I talk about is raising prices, right? But that doesn't mean that just raise your prices and all works well. There is a limit to this. And you found that limit. So talk to us about your implementation of the pricing increases and what happened and where you hit a ceiling and what we learned from that.
So we started off too cheap, probably. We started off at $29 a month. And then basically each year we would go 29, 39, 49. And at 49, we were still, you get a little bit of a drop off, but it was still okay. As soon as we went past $50, that seemed to be the psychological level. At $50 a month, it hit sales by probably 30%. And then you start to think, well, the only way I can generate more income is more advertising. But then you just end up in the realms of, I've always been aware of the quote about profit is sanity and turnover is vanity. And so for me, I don't care, if I'm only doing 10,000 a month, but it's all profit, that's better than doing 100,000 a month and employing X hundred people and ending up with less. So for me, that made most sense. And then at that point, we kind of said, well, okay, we've hit a ceiling, what we're going to do. And this was about 2012, 13. So we said, okay, the average person now is only staying with us 3 or 4 months. And what tends to happen with any educational program, people start full of enthusiasm. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be great. And then life happens and then something, and the wife's giving them grief or the husband or the partner, and they get bored and they forget and they go. So we worked out that the average value of a client at the time was about $150. So we said, okay, we'll do an annual ticket at $199 and we'll do a lifetime ticket initially at $297. So we were bringing more in, which would enable us to spend a bit more on the advertising, and we could get the average value of order up. And then later on, we went from $197 to $297, and nowadays it's $297 for a year, which saves them 60%, or $497 one-off payment. And with that, they also get an hour with me where I give them a personalized plan to follow as a benefit. And if they join for a year, they get half an hour with me. So that was the way on that part of the business. And basically that stayed the same since 2014. Then my partner at the time, the guy that I'd never met who we'd started this with, was getting fed up of it. And he just said, look, you can buy me out. And he came back with quite a reasonable figure, really, although by this point I was doing all the work. And so I bought him out, and I started to do high ticket. So I started to do private coaching. And I was also doing the managed money for people. So I was trading more than $1 million of other people's money, getting a decent profit share from that. And then with the high ticket stuff, I went for 5,000 for 6 months. And for that, they get an intensive program, they get lifetime membership, et cetera, et cetera.
I want to get to that shift in just a moment. But before we do that, for our listeners, I want to highlight something really critical you did there. Actually, a few things. One is you had a price point and you tested the price increases. While your cost of goods stayed the same and everything else, your profit margin grew. But at a certain point, you saw the impact was too big for it to make sense. And so you sort of found where that ceiling was. So that was really good testing of success, then a quote failure, and you knew where to back off. And it's easy to click undo on a pricing change like that. So that's really big. And for our listeners, you should be testing your price changes. Second thing I want to highlight that I love that you did is you were looking at your churn of how long do our customers stay with us? What's our customer lifetime value? And you then packaged up an annual membership versus a monthly. And then you packaged up again a lifetime access versus annual or monthly. And each step of the way, there's higher perceived value. And you were also increasing that customer lifetime value. So it was a win for everyone. And that's a really, really good model to follow.
There's another point there actually as well, Jeffrey, that the people who are willing to spend more money are better candidates for the private coaching as well. So there was an added benefit that if they were willing to spend $500, you tend to find university graduates will spend money on education without really thinking about it. And certainly online, if they will spend money with you, initially, you sell something for $5 to get them in, and then they might buy the $50 a month product. But if you are charging $500 and they are willing, the whole thing is that they get people to trust you. But if they've spent $500 with you, then the leap at that point, 5 years ago, was to $5,000 for private coaching was not so great.
Yeah, it's funny that the premium pricing has a lot of perks, but one of them being is that you often get better customers who are more, if we're using coaching talk, they're more compliant. They're more willing to do the things you're talking about because they have more skin in the game. They're vested. Someone who spends 99 cents or gets a free PDF from you, like they're not that invested. Think about, how often you've gotten something for free and then do you utilize it, or is it stay a downloaded file or a free login that you don't get around to watching, right? So, there's value in having that higher price point commitment. So kudos on that. All right. So when you realized that this low ticket monthly model wasn't working as well, you mentioned this pivot towards like higher ticket coaching and all. Tell us about what that shift was like in terms of deliverables, in terms of your value proposition to prospects and so forth.
It was still in many ways, again, it was monetizing work I was already doing. But basically what I would take people, we have a very comprehensive set of courses to go through. But at the end of the day, as I discovered when I finally paid up for a proper mentor, is that it's so much easier when you can look over the shoulder of somebody who's doing this for a living or has done this for a living. And we get people, I have a private student recently who got completely the wrong end of the stick about something. And I don't know how, but he got the wrong end of the stick and he'd been doing the wrong thing for months. So the only extra thing for me is the time element. So I have private sessions on Zoom. So we're talking like this. They give me their analysis for the week ahead. We give them feedback and etc. And the goal is to help them to be able to see what I see within a month, 6 weeks. Whereas if they're doing it on their own, it can maybe take them 6 months because they get distracted, etc. The other thing you find is that once people have committed to spend some money, they're far more motivated. And the final thing is, people don't realize particularly, but when somebody comes to me for private, I am actually interviewing them. Because if I think that they haven't got enough get up and go and they're not committed enough, and I will tell people this, and I will say, people say to me, oh, what's the guarantee of success? There is no guarantee of success. You might not be any good at this. if everybody got a degree coming out of university for participation, then it would devalue what there is. So the point is that when they come to me, I will quite often say, well, look, go back and study this for 3 more months and then come back and let's have a chat. Whereas most of the competitors in this niche employ salespeople and they will sign you up no matter what. And it's funny, I had an American a few weeks ago, and you guys are so used to being hard sold that I could tell he was waiting for me to turn on the hard sell at the end. And I said to him in the end, I said, look, you've never heard of me. You don't know me from Adam. What I suggest you do is join for a month for $69. If you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. But then if you do like what we do and you think that I am the man for you, then come back to me. And there was like this pregnant pause of that he was just expecting the big hit, come on, give us your money. And I'm not into that. I didn't need that in my early days. I certainly don't need it now. And I want to work with people who are interested. I'm working at the moment with a lawyer, an accountant, a very senior bank representative. I've taught bank traders. So I'm trying to build a group of people who can contribute back to me as well, so I get something out of it. Rather than just being stood at the head of the classroom, it's a two-way street.
Nice. Now, I want to break down something you shared there. In the book, we often talk about how you can have like these 3 tiers of the do-it-yourself, the done with you, and the done for you. And the do-it-yourself is consuming the information you had. You have free information, the free PDFs and so forth. People can get that and do it on their own, right? The done with you is when they're now getting that coaching and they're presenting the plans like you were talking about, and you're going over and helping them alongside to become better. And the done for you is simply the, here's my money, go trade this. And so in any of our businesses, we can really look at those 3 different tiers, and each step as you go up is worth a lot more, and you are able to charge a lot more because there's a lot more value. And you did a beautiful job, I think, breaking those down. So Mark, you shared with me, you got some advice from, an unlikely mentor when it came to increasing pricing on the mentorship side. Talk to us about that conversation with your daughter and, what that led to in terms of your pricing.
My daughter, for I think her 16th birthday, I bought her a program on how to build websites. And I then paid for a mentor for photography. And she's still traveling the world now in her early 30s, having gone. So her whole life has been about travel and doing things that she loves doing. And she said to me a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I was thinking of retiring completely in 2020, and then I stumbled on crypto. So that's a separate story. But I got to the point, and I was getting tired with the amount of people I was teaching. And I'd come up to 60, and I thought, what? I don't need to do this anymore. I'll give it a break. And she said, you're too cheap. And I said, well, I think it's the English in me, but I think, $5,000 is a lot of money. And she said, no, you should be charging 20. And no, we're not going to 20. Anyway, long story short, we got to 10,000. And it may have reduced initially the waiting list that I'm fortunate enough to have. But once that had gone, the initial, he's charging a lot more. I haven't lost anything nowadays. So that it's better for me because I earn a similar amount of money for less work, and I can give more value to the people that I do teach, and I can be more selective about the people I teach. But she was quite right. I was too cheap. And I think always it was this thing about the $50 level, where going back 15 years earlier, that $50 killed it. Well, to go from 5,000 to 10,000, woof, that's a big jump, isn't it? But she was right. It worked. So she's my mentor now.
Well, that is excellent advice. And I love that, once again, you tested that price change and your profits increase so much more with a higher price point. You have better clients and you're able to make effectively twice as much for half that work. So really nicely done. All right. Now, when we look at these different models of providing do-it-yourself information, coaching one-on-one or with group as you're doing stuff with your clients versus the done-for-you trading, like what were the hurdles for you in trying to manage those different business models and doing stuff for your clients versus with them versus just, teaching them to do it on their own?
I have a tendency, approximately every 5 years, I get bored and I need to do something else. And I was coming up to 2020, and I was just sick of Forex. And it's stressful. You're managing other people's money. And I knew every client because I used to interview every client before and say, what's their risk tolerance and all this kind of thing. So I knew that this might be so-and-so's part of his pension and this kind of thing. And it's stressful, and I didn't need it. And then 2019, I started reading about Bitcoin. And one of my students in 2015 tried to get me mining Bitcoin, and I didn't understand it, to my shame. Anyway, 2019, 2020, early 20, I discovered it, and it was almost like a light bulb going on. And again, it's not a massive difference to what I'd already been doing. It was just another change in direction. But boy, was it profitable. I mean, I bought my first Bitcoin in February 2020 for 8,000. The following month, COVID came along and it dropped to 4 as the world finance system crashed. But I just kept buying. And then in the May, I took beta testers with me when it was still around 9,000. And then in the October, I did a webinar. I said, look, I think this could be the most profitable period in your lifetime. And boy, was it, we had Bitcoin went from 8,000 to 68, but we had some of the smaller tokens were up 6,000%. And I actually made more personal money in 10 months than I had in previous 30 years. And I am not a fan of this conventional thing of just put money in your IRA, just put money in the S&P. And then if you're lucky, when you're 80, you might have some money. Because as we get older, you realize that it's more important is to enjoy life now when you're young and healthy, not hope that you're going to be young and healthy and not creaky when you get to 80. And I think the other thing, I mean, the pension system that we know it in the West is not going to exist anyway. All the governments are bankrupt, they can't afford it, and you've got aging population. So you need to learn to look after yourself, and you need to find multiple ways to make money, and you need to be very deft on your feet because AI is changing things significantly. And we talked about this before, Americans, within your DNA is as soon as a child is born, you start saving for college. Well, what college you were doing 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. I have a client, as I said earlier, I've got an accountant and a lawyer, and they both tell me that there's 20, 30% of jobs have gone within their company in the last 18 months. And an accountant nowadays, everybody's doing it on an app. And apart from the high level guys, the lower end who've just qualified, they're basically just ticking boxes off an app and not getting paid the big money anymore. So multiple income streams, think about what's going on, join the dots, etc., etc.
Well, I like that. Just like how before you moved, the family to, island life and all, after having sold the business, you had rental properties, and that provided sort of that backstop income-wise from the multiple streams. And here you're talking about some more speculative trading, but you still have that counterbalance by other trades and other accounts. And there's, I think, a lot of good wisdom in that. Sometimes people get into the world of business and put all their eggs and everything into the one idea without knowing if it'll ever work. And while those make for great stories, that's super high risk. It's much easier when you can, test out an idea, see if it's got legs, see if it resonates with the market, and build on that incrementally while still having other streams and those backstops in place. So back to the coaching business side of things and the membership model you have. A lot of our listeners have membership or continuity programs within their business and have looked at this idea of monthly, annual, lifetime, and so on. Looking at the financials, what was the impact when you shifted from this monthly to annual to lifetime access that brought in such a good chunk of change? What does that do for your numbers?
We still do the lower tier, the entry level, because again, what's changed over the years? When we started in 2008, there was very little competition, and therefore the searches on Google for trading and Forex, I think, peaked around 2011, last time we had a major crash. So after the panic of the crash, then people started looking for other ways to make money, which again, if they'd done it before, they would have been in a better position. So nowadays we have a lot more competition. We have a lot more competition that is blatantly telling lies and, you're going to get rich quick and all this nonsense. So we're kind of in a pool which is difficult to get people in. But our USP, our unique selling point is that we tell it as it is and say, this is not easy. This is a profession. And the majority of people come to us have been and bought all the shiny toys and all the BS and often come to us on the last way. It's quite addictive, is trading. So they come to us almost on the way out of the door and think, oh, well, we'll give this one a try. So we still have the entry level, but then we offer the upsell. So if within a month they decide that they want to go from the 69 to lifetime or annual, we allow them to upgrade and we deduct the initial 69. So we're still we're still at the front end bringing people in. We have considered getting rid of all the lower end and just going up 500 a month, but no. Again, I don't want to do it. And I think the other thing is, if things are going to get difficult for people, it's a lot easier and more beneficial for them as well as us to say, okay, I can give this a try. I'd say we do it with a 30-day guarantee, money back, and there's no quibble. So if you don't like it for any reason, you have your money back. We get some that take the mickey, 29 days and a half, they'll ask for the money back. And they are the ones that have taken up more time from the help desk and everything else, but we don't get that many for it to be objectionable. If we did, we might just go for annual and lifetime.
It's good to have that ascension path, right? That can bring folks in. They're able to try it out and ascend from there, because you're providing value each step of the way.
The other thing, what we did is in 2020, when I started the crypto journey, and getting more into stocks again, I started a separate website called yourinvestingfuture.com. And that was all about I did it in a unique way because it was a rush job. And I did it cheap. I think I charged $500 a year. And I did it on a gentleman's agreement. If you made more than $10,000 out of it, from my research, we had a gentleman's agreement, you would pay me 5% bonus, which was nothing in the scheme of things. And many people didn't give me anything, but quite a few did. At the end of the year, it was quite a pleasant surprise. And again, it was work I was doing for myself anyway, and therefore it wasn't too much more work. But the other thing, it was a cross-sell, because people who had been on the Forex journey with me liked to trade. And because I was doing part of the content I would put in the Forex site, sometimes delayed, sometimes only part of it, in fairness to the ones who paid extra for the other site. But again, it was diversifying sideways, but still the same skill set. And again, if the type of person who is interested in this subject, if you can think of another parallel product that uses the same skill set, then it's better for them and it's better for us. That was another branch that we did with it.
Yeah. Well analyzed. That's good takeaways from that. So, and that, by the way, I see thematically in your work that you experiment, you try these things out, and you're able to learn from that. And that's such a skill for us business owners, is not to see success or failure, but to see, the lessons that are learned each step of the way. So, I want to ask you, Mark, the doubling of your coaching fee when you did that had this other interesting side effect that most folks don't realize, is that you were able to put a waiting list in place, further adding to this scarcity. Tell us about the waiting list, what that looked like, where that came from, and what that means for you guys as a business.
Initially, 2020, I was very busy with crypto. So I kind of started to build up a bit of a waiting list because I needed to focus. And focus is really important. When you're in a hot market at the right time, you need to focus. So by the time 21 came and we got the crash in crypto, what I'd done with clients on the way up was say, look, this cannot go on forever. We want initial stake out. We want to take some profit out, etc. along the way. And so when all that came down, okay, I kept what was left and made good money, profit, got the stake out, and I got a waiting list at that point. And I thought, I don't want to, partly because of my stage in life, I want to spend more time doing the things I want to do. And I didn't want to be spending 2-3 hours a day per student, 2-3 sessions a day with students, because I just find it too tiring because I've got other things to do as well. So I kind of said, right, well, I'll maximum take 4 at a time, because then I could give them an hour a week each, and the backup with it, there's probably another hour in reviewing what they're doing and everything else, without it being particularly taxing. Obviously, for somebody younger, then they could be doing 2, 3, 4 sessions a day, and the sky's the limit with it. And then because of that, I was more able to do this thing where I interview people. They're not expecting it, but and also you've got to have a bit of a chemistry, because if you're going to work closely with somebody for 6 months, you need to be able to think, well, A, this person is interesting, and B, I think we can work together. Because I quite simply say to people, I'm not here to push you. If you don't turn up, don't turn up once. I'll forgive you because things happen. But you miss again, you've lost a session. I am not here to push you. I am here to lead. And so they've got to be motivated, and they have to come across when I'm talking with them. They have to come across to me that they're willing to walk through walls, that they are determined to do this. And so for me, that's been the way I've done it. And I tend to get a lot of people at Christmas time. So I'm always really busy in January. I took half a dozen in January this year and some more in February. But my wife and I travel 3 months a year. And so I'm basically just staging it out. But on that basis, yeah, Christmas is a really good time of year for our kind of business because people have had another year not achieving their goals and everybody's thinking about, I don't want another year of this. And, really, I ought to just bite the bullet and pay this fella to teach me how to do it properly. So we get peaks as every business. But in terms of that, that's fine for me. If we wanted to do more, we could. And I do now have a young guy that I taught in 2020 during COVID. He quit his job in late 21. He's been trading full time and he also teaches. So, and with him, we charge $4,500. So he's half price of me. And he's good. He's a very good trader. The only thing with him is I'm better in an overall financial world, how everything fits together. But he's very good in Forex and crypto, and he's learning other things as we go along. So if people can't afford me, they can have Ashley, and he's teaching them what I taught him. And I have another guy that I taught in 2008. He's still with us that contributes, and he started teaching people as well. And then I have another guy I taught in 2020 who also quit his job, and he's teaching people. So I'm surrounded by individuals, none of whom are employed. Everybody is self-employed, because that's the other thing. I swore when I left the UK 25 years ago, I would never employ anybody again. The hassle that goes with it, no. But this way, everybody's independent. They all generate their own income and they all contribute.
Yeah, that's also good scalability too. You're able to scale it beyond just you doing this. And you have that wait list of folks who are waiting to work with you. There's a business I was working with that in a similar way had sort of the main guru, the best, highest value subject matter expert at that top. And they had sort of an upper echelon of clients they'd work with. And the only way to get there was to get into one of the lower tiers. And so clients effectively had to buy into, I jokingly called it their purgatory, but sort of this waiting room they're paying monthly to be part of just to get the opportunity to, to ascend up to that group when someone, leaves, dies, or so on. And it's a model that has that forever waiting list. So
you have to be careful with that though, because some of it, I've seen it done in the US with a company in our niche. And I had a guy, he paid about $10,000. And then they kind of said, well, we know you're not quite there yet. You need to go to the silver level. And he said, there's a silver level? So that was another $5 at $5,000. And then he needed to really, really crack all this. He needed to go to the supreme level. And that was another $20,000. And it's like, and he said to me, I learned more on your website, Mark, in a month for $69 than what I went through this. So again, if you're going to have that business model, you're just going to burn through people and end up with a shocking reputation. So again, you've got to be really careful if you're going to do that you are sincere and it's legitimate.
The key piece there always, and I remind folks of this all the time, is always be providing more value than you're charging, right? So long as that is in place, you have customers who are getting a high value ROI from their work with you. If that ever inverts and people are paying more than the value they're getting, that is a problem. And that's where we got to fix, that value problem. So, all right, speaking of wisdom and mentoring and all the rest of this, if you're talking to a business owner who feels like they've hit a brick wall in their industry or technology is changing under their feet faster than they're ready for, what advice would you have for them in their business?
Well, one piece of advice is it may be time to get out of it. With AI and what's going on, it may be time. What I would say is for anybody listening to this is try find a side hustle now, something that you could be doing, and think about what you do now. I have a lady I'm teaching at the moment that works in the health service in the UK. And in the UK, if they retire from the health service, they get a lump sum payment and they get a decent pension, but often they can be rehired as a consultant for twice as much money a couple of days a week. So, and I have another guy, an IT guy, that he'd quit his job 18 months ago to trade. But I said to him, look, don't just quit. You know, 100,000 a year job, do not just quit. Let's do it in stages. It's the old Tim, I forget his surname now, the 4-hour working week guy from years ago. You know, downgrade, see if you can work from home 1 day a week. And after COVID, everybody's doing it, but 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and ease your way out. And you never know, you might actually find that you don't mind doing what you're doing if you're doing it 2 days or 3 days a week. But it's this multiple income streams. Never have it where everything is tied to one thing, because you don't know if tomorrow that's gone. So that would be one of the things. I say, with me, with my bricks and mortar business, coming up to 40, been doing it 5 or 6 years, I was sick of the hassle with staff and all the government legislation and the politics and everything. And you know what? I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. So I say, one option is, do you really want to, have you got the passion for this still? Do you really want to be doing this? And then if you do, look at what other people are doing innovatively. In the UK, years ago, we used to say that we were 10 years behind America. So if something new came out in America, you could look at that and think, oh, well, that could work in the UK. And so, look at what other people are doing. Get on YouTube and watch what the gurus are doing and kind of sniff with the BS meter going, but say, well, hang on a minute, that's actually not a bad idea. If not, find somebody who's in the sector who you can trust to talk to. And most people, I think, would be willing to give people an hour just to say, well, okay, let's have a look at what you're doing and how you're doing it, etc. I did have a brief spell before we left the UK in 1999. I did actually work for the government for 6 months, and it was going into small businesses who were growing and basically to review what they were doing to try to work out how they could grow. And just having somebody from the outside to sit there and say, well, hang on a minute, what's he doing? How much are you paying that? Where's that going? Why are you paying that much for this? And et cetera, et cetera. Just to have another pair of eyes from somebody you can trust, and ideally in your industry, maybe somebody that's retired. A lot of older people now, I'm in my mid-60s now. I have no intention of retiring because I'd die of boredom. But a lot of people, my age and older, still want to be able to be mentally active and do things. And, I've got 45 years of work experience behind me and 45 years of running businesses. So find somebody to pick their brains and read and explore, and don't be shy about being willing to reach out to people, and don't be mean in terms of not being willing to pay for it, because the exponential gain you can make, it can be very significant.
Well said. So, Mark, you and I are both numbers guys. When we look at businesses, or obviously you in the world of trading and all, briefly, when you think about sort of the key performance indicators or numbers you look at in the membership and coaching business, like what numbers do you keep an eye on to see where the business is at?
I don't do as much as I should, to be perfectly honest. That is a weakness of mine. It's ironic because I am in a numbers business, but I don't look too much at what's going underneath. We have definitely seen a shift of late because of AI in the search engines. And we struggled for years as well in that the brokers who really make the money in this niche, they will advertise for keywords that are not relevant. So, for example, if somebody said best Forex mentor, instead of us coming at the top of a page, we would be in fifth, because the first 5 on the page were brokers, and these brokers are willing to pay $7 and $8 a click. Well, if your average conversion on a website is 2% for cold traffic, and our average value of order is 150, it doesn't work. It doesn't pay. And then on that page, at the bottom of the page, you'd have another 3 adverts. So to get on the front page for our niche, you were 4 businesses. Now with AI, you don't even get to the page. And so I still get people all the time pitching SEO for me, which, if you're not familiar, it's search engine optimization, how you appear in the rankings. Well, all that's changed in the last 6-8 months. So now it's tricky. For us, we are on YouTube. We give lots of free content away. We're on X. We give a lot away. And that's our way of dealing with this, is to say, okay, if we give enough stuff away and people see that it looks legitimate, then they're willing to come and have a look. And we really need to focus more on YouTube. But again, there's a lot of things where people buy traffic and they buy viewers and things, and we've never done it. And I am lazy in that respect. So I'm not the best person to talk to about stuff like that.
No worries. Super. So to recap for our listeners, you moved from a successful but a capped membership model to a strategic suite of high-ticket offers and managed accounts, allowing you to maximize the amount of each transaction and ultimately achieve that freedom to stay on that beautiful island with the family. So, Mark, for our listeners who want to learn more about you, where should they go right now?
I say we're on X and we're on YouTube. Just Google Mark Walton, Mark with a C, or our main site for Forex training is forexmentorpro.com. And there's a blog attached as well in the free course. And if they want to join us, there's a 30-day guarantee. Brilliantly done. Love that funnel we've talked about, and we get to experience that firsthand. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your tremendous career, the lessons learned in your business, and how you found yourself stuck, but then got the strategies in place to break through and get back to that growth you deserve. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks so much for listening. Quick reminder, hit that subscribe button right now so you can get more episodes when they come out automatically. And remember to leave that rating and review right now.